The wind was sharp that evening, slicing across the shoreline as if it carried unfinished stories from the sea. The tide rolled in slow, deliberate waves, and the sky burned in shades of gold and crimson. He stood there barefoot in the sand, jeans rolled up, holding a pair of tiny pink sandals in one hand and a melting ice cream cone in the other. His daughter's laughter echoed behind him as she chased seagulls without success. And then the voice came smooth, amused, slightly mocking. "Enjoying the view?" The words weren't cruel, but they carried the kind of effortless confidence that only comes from someone who has never had to fight for anything. He turned, squinting into the sunlight, and saw her. Elegant white dress, expensive sunglasses, heels that had no business touching sand. She looked like she belonged in a boardroom, not on a public beach. She was smiling at him, clearly entertained by what she assumed was a simple, lonely man staring at the horizon. Before we go further, if you believe in kindness, second chances, and the quiet strength of single parents, take a moment to like this video, comment where you're watching from, share it with someone who needs hope today, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful stories that touch the heart. He looked back at the ocean, then at his daughter, and finally at her. His answer came without hesitation, without bitterness, without embarrassment. "No," he said softly. "I'm watching my whole world learn how to be brave." Her smile faded. The single dad's name was Daniel Mercer. 2 years earlier, he had stood in a hospital hallway with the same empty stare, but there had been no ocean-thinly white walls and the unbearable silence after machines stopped beeping. His wife, Clara, had passed away unexpectedly due to complications no one saw coming. In one night, Daniel had become both mother and father to a 3-year-old girl named Lily. He had been an architect once, passionate about design, meticulous with blueprints. But grief doesn't respect careers. He missed deadlines. He forgot meetings. He began showing up late, distracted, hollow. Eventually, the firm let him go out cruelly, but inevitably. They needed stability. Daniel could barely remember to eat. Bills piled up. He sold his car. He moved from their 2-bedroom apartment into a small studio closer to the outskirts of town. He learned how to braid Lily's hair by watching online tutorials at 2 in the morning. He learned how to cook meals that didn't come from boxes. He learned how to sit through waves of grief without collapsing in front of his daughter. But the hardest lesson was learning how to smile again. The beach had become their sanctuary. It was free, wide, forgiving. Lily loved it because the ocean never judged her lopsided sandcastles. Daniel loved it because the sound of the waves drowned out his regrets. The woman who had teased him that evening was named Victoria Hale. She was the CEO of a rapidly expanding tech company, known for her sharp decisions and even sharper business instincts. Her life was scheduled down to the minute. That day, she had come to the beach after closing a multi-million-dollar deal, seeking quiet before another flight to another city. She wasn't used to seeing men like Daniel look content. She was used to ambition, hunger, competition. His stillness confused her. After his response, she removed her sunglasses, studying him more closely. There was no resentment in his expression, no attempt to impress her. Only calm pride as he watched Lily stumble in the sand and then stand again, giggling at her own fall. Victoria found herself asking questions she didn't normally ask. She learned that Daniel had once designed sustainable housing projects. She learned that he had paused his career to raise his daughter. She learned that he was currently freelancing small drafting jobs online, barely enough to cover rent. She expected him to complain. He didn't. She expected him to blame fate. He didn't. Instead, he spoke about Lily's first day at preschool, about how she insisted on wearing mismatched socks because life is too short for boring feet. He spoke about how fear doesn't disappear when you become a parent, it multiplies, but so does purpose. Victoria left the beach unsettled. Back in her penthouse that night, surrounded by glass walls and city lights, she realized she couldn't remember the last time she had watched a sunset without checking her phone. She couldn't remember the last time someone had spoken about love without expecting something in return. Over the next week, Daniel returned to the beach as usual. He didn't expect to see her again. People like her existed in a different orbit, but on Thursday evening, she was there. This time in flats. She didn't tease him. She simply stood beside him, watching Lily build a crooked tower of sand. Victoria admitted something she rarely confessed. She had built her empire to prove something to investors, to competitors, to a father who once told her that emotions were weaknesses. She had succeeded, yet she felt strangely behind in life. Daniel didn't offer advice. He only listened, and that's when Victoria made a decision that surprised even herself. Her company had recently announced a new initiative: eco-friendly housing in underdeveloped coastal communities. They had funding, engineers, resources. What they lacked was heart. She remembered Daniel mentioning his old designs for sustainable housing. She asked to see them. He hesitated. Those blueprints represented a life he thought he had lost. They were dusty, outdated. But he brought them the next day in a worn leather folder. Victoria spent hours reviewing them. They weren't flashy, they weren't revolutionary in a tech sense, but they were thoughtful, designed around families, community spaces, natural light, child-friendly layouts. They were built from the perspective of someone who understood what home truly meant. For the first time in 2 years, Daniel felt seen, not as a struggling widower, not as a charity case, but as a professional. Victoria offered him a consulting role on the project. It wasn't pity. It was partnership. The early days were hard. Daniel battled insecurity, wondering if he had been out of the industry too long. Meetings intimidated him. Corporate language felt foreign. But every evening, he returned to Lily, who asked him about building houses for happy families. Her belief in him anchored his confidence. Victoria, too, changed. She began leaving the office before sunset once a week. She started visiting project sites in person rather than delegating. She even found herself laughing more, something her employees quietly noticed. Yet challenges came. Investors questioned Daniel's unconventional ideas. Some executives doubted his experience gap. Victoria faced criticism for giving significant responsibility to someone emotionally distracted. Rumors circulated that she was making decisions based on personal sentiment. One tense board meeting nearly derailed everything. A senior partner argued that profit margins should override community-focused features. Daniel sat silent, unsure if he should speak. Victoria looked at him across the table. He cleared his throat and described a memory of Lily asking why their old apartment had no balcony. He explained how access to light, air, and shared outdoor space affected children's development. He spoke not with aggression, but with conviction rooted in lived experience. The room fell quiet. Profit projections were adjusted. The features stayed. Months passed. The first housing complex opened by the sea. Families moved in, single parents, elderly couples, young children racing down safe walkways Daniel had insisted on including. There was a small community garden in the center. On opening day, Lily cut the ribbon beside her father, holding oversized scissors with both hands. Victoria stood behind them, applauding, but something in her chest felt different than pride. It felt like belonging. Daniel had not become wealthy overnight. He still budgeted carefully. He still braided hair at dawn. He still carried grief like a folded letter in his pocket. But he no longer felt invisible. One evening, nearly a year after that first teasing comment, they stood again on the same beach. The project had expanded. Daniel had been offered a permanent leadership role in community design. Victoria's company had gained recognition not just for innovation, but for impact. The sun dipped low, painting the water in amber light. Lily ran ahead, fearless now, chasing waves without hesitation. Victoria glanced at Daniel and asked quietly if he was enjoying the view this time. He smiled, eyes reflecting the ocean. He said that the view had never been the water. It had always been the chance to rebuild, to prove to his daughter that loss doesn't end your story. It simply changes its direction. Victoria realized that in trying to build structures of steel and glass, she had forgotten to build moments. If this story has touched your heart so far, take a moment to like the video, share it with someone who believes in quiet strength, and subscribe for more stories that remind us what truly matters. And before we reach the final moments, please comment second chances are real if you believe people deserve opportunities to rise again after life knocks them down. The wind grew softer. Lily ran back toward them, sand-covered and glowing with laughter. Daniel lifted her into his arms effortlessly. Victoria watched the scene, simple, unfiltered love between a father and his daughter, and understood something she had missed her entire life. Success without connection feels hollow. Ambition without empathy feels cold. But when purpose meets compassion, everything changes. Daniel had once lost almost everything. Yet on that beach, he had gained something more powerful than status: respect, opportunity, and the quiet knowledge that he had shown his daughter what resilience looks like. The ocean continued its endless rhythm, indifferent to titles like CEO or single dad. But for two people standing on that shore, everything had shifted. Because sometimes the most stunning answer isn't clever or sharp. Sometimes it's a simple truth spoken by someone who has survived the storm and still chooses to see beauty. And in that golden light, with laughter rising above the waves, they were no longer strangers from different worlds. They were proof that kindness can redirect destiny. They were proof that second chances are real. And they were proof that the most breathtaking view in the world is watching someone you love grow brave enough to face it.